From paranormal encounters and unseen forces to unsettling human movements. These are the most disturbing videos on the internet footage. So terrifying, even the people who recorded it still can't explain what they witnessed. Ghost hunting teams know that certain environments don't just scare you, they change you. That's what happened in Iraq when investigators entered a remote cave, and one of their own stopped responding as himself. His body stiffened, his movements became something the rest of the team didn't recognize. In the background, a dark figure in dark clothing stood almost completely still present, in a way that felt less like coincidence and more like ownership. The team tried to reach their colleague, but he remained locked in place until his body simply gave out from exhaustion. They got out, but every person who walked back into the light that day carried something from that cave that no debrief could touch. Crosswalk lift. Roadside surveillance cameras record thousands of ordinary moments. What this one recorded was not ordinary. Midway across a crosswalk, a man was lifted clean off the ground and thrown back down hard. Nothing visible doing it. He got up, visibly disoriented, and made his way back to where he had started. A woman passing nearby stopped and stared, clearly having seen the same thing. When the clip surfaced online, two camps formed immediately. Those who pointed to a Matrix glitch, and those who thought the man's reaction suggested he had been testing something. Neither explanation fully accounts for what the camera actually recorded. Driverless car. Two friends driving through a deserted road in Islamabad late at night noticed another car keeping pace alongside them. It matched their speed, held its lane, moved exactly as a driven car would, except no one was in the driver's seat. The only person visible was a man in the passenger seat, eyes on his phone, completely relaxed. The friends claimed he appeared to be talking to something beside him, and his eyes looked red when the light caught them right. They called out to him through their window. He didn't react at all, staying completely focused on his phone, as if the sound of their voices wasn't reaching him from a world he no longer fully occupied. Piano key?
Vin, you heard that?
Something felt off the moment they arrived at the mountain Airbnb, the kind of feeling that's easy to dismiss until it isn't. One friend stayed behind while the others went for groceries. Alone in the house, he heard piano music drifting from a closed room.
Fucking heard it.
He assumed one of his friends had stayed back without telling him. The room was completely empty. Nobody believed him when he told them. So when it happened again, he brought the camera. He walked in, pointed it at the piano, and a single key pressed itself down in full view of the lens. His reaction was immediate. He did not stay in that room.
Oh, shit!
Hand mirror. A woman on a subway was calmly applying lipstick. Nothing unusual about that until you noticed there was no mirror anywhere in front of her. Her hands moved through the air with complete precision, applying it perfectly without any reflection to guide her. Some people watching the clip argued it was simply a camera angle playing tricks. Others went straight to the Matrix glitch theory. A few suggested she had some kind of ability most people don't. It could absolutely be staged. But if it isn't, then something about how we understand ordinary human perception might need a quiet rethink. The Granada Session. 3 young women in Granada, Spain, had heard enough rumors about a friend's rental being haunted to decide they needed to find out for themselves. Without a proper Ouija board, they made one from paper and used a wine glass instead. The moment all 3 stepped away from the table briefly, the glass began moving on its own, sliding across the paper until it reached them, right as the lights cut out completely. What followed got significantly worse. Whatever had been moving that glass wasn't satisfied with the table anymore. Within minutes, it had found one of the girls and appeared to be taking hold of her entirely. The kitchen pull. A woman was alone in her kitchen when something grabbed her hair and yanked hard enough to pull her straight to the floor. No one else was in the room. The clip spread fast, and the theories came faster, especially after someone in the comments claimed to know her personally and mentioned her mother-in-law had passed away just weeks before. Whether that detail was true or not, it landed on an already unsettled audience and refused to leave. The timing of this one is difficult to separate from that pattern. No formal investigation followed. The footage kept circulating, and the question it raises has never been properly answered. Ouija board. 2 separate sessions, 2 identical moments of violation. A father and his family turned to a Ouija board after strange activity in their home had gone on long enough. Near the end of their session, the planchette was pulled clean out of all 3 of their hands at once.
Yeah. Rubbish.
Yeah, that was earlier.
Any more? Come on.
Yeah.
We'll close it.
Dad, please.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't want to do
okay,
this
it's
anymore.
okay.
Take it off.
Separately, a man decided to run his own session alone in a long, abandoned house. Before he even began, something moved in the dark behind him.
Is there anybody in this room with me that would like to communicate?
As he worked through the board, the planchette was torn from his grip as well, and whatever had taken it wasn't finished. The atmosphere in that house shifted immediately, and the man didn't stay to negotiate his way through the rest of the night.
I'm gonna release the title. If you're here, please let me know you are here.
Invisible shape.
Mom, what is it? Mom, what is this?
Strange enough activities had been happening in the house, so they set up a camera. What it caught was difficult to dismiss. A mother and her son were mid-conversation when something unseen threw the box the boy had been holding clean to the floor. The child turned and pointed at the wall beside them. Nothing was visible. But when the mother threw a cloth in that direction, it landed on something solid, draping itself around an invisible humanoid shape, briefly outlining a small, clearly defined figure standing in the room with them. The footage spread quickly. Most people who watched it ran out of rational explanations before the clip even finished. The Haunted Hostel. In Mumbai, a newly enrolled student needed affordable housing and booked a spot in a boys' hostel that had a known reputation for paranormal activity, deciding the lower cost was worth the risk. A security camera was already running when it happened. He had just moved from the main hallway into an adjoining room when the encounter occurred, brief, jarring, and enough to override any willingness to push through it. He left the building immediately, prioritizing his safety over the price difference. Whatever was in that hostel, it apparently made itself known quickly to anyone who moved through those hallways after dark. Haunted Push. Late at night, in a girls' hostel in Nida, a resident was moving through her room after finishing her routine when the air around her changed. Something unseen passed close by, and then a force from behind pushed her hard enough to visibly jolt her forward. She triggered the alarm immediately and looked around the room. Nobody there, no open windows, no explanation for what had just made contact with her back. What struck people watching the footage almost as much as the push itself was how she responded. She didn't panic. She didn't scream. She walked away calmly, like someone who had learned not to be surprised by what shared her space at night. Empty doorway. Late at night, a teacher alone in his classroom began talking to someone, nodding, gesturing, answering questions, pointing toward the class schedule on the wall, a completely normal conversation by every measure except one. The CCTV showed nothing at the door. Nobody had entered. Nobody was standing there. He later said he had assumed a parent had come in with concerns about their child, and the exchange had felt entirely real to him. Then, mid-conversation, he walked out of the classroom toward another room, moving with the focused purpose of someone following a person down a hallway. The hallway footage showed him walking alone. Whoever he was following, the cameras never saw them. Gym session. He was completely alone in the gym. Multiple camera angles confirmed it, but the footage didn't look like a man working out alone. Straps behind him shifted without anyone nearby. He flinched away from a touch that came from an empty space beside him. A medicine ball moved on its own as he stepped away from it. Then, most strikingly, he lost his footing and appeared to be dragged a short distance across the floor before scrambling upright and running for the exit. Additional camera angles confirmed he was completely alone the entire time. He left visibly shaken and did not return to finish his workout. Manchester Shadow. They had been noticing things long enough to install cameras, and the footage came back with more than they had prepared for. A Manchester couple had been noticing things in their home long enough to install cameras, and the footage came back with more than they had prepared for. A black mist-like shadow moved through the bedroom on its own, and at one point reached down toward the bed, grabbed the wife by her feet, and dragged her out from under the covers, waking her hard and fast. A hallway camera captured the vacuum cleaner sliding back and forth on its own in the same time frame. The husband had been willing to consider rational explanations before the footage. Watching both cameras back, he stopped looking for one. Elmo climb.
Quiet!
Nobody was prepared for a balloon to be the most unsettling thing on the internet that week. An Elmo-shaped balloon was caught on camera climbing a staircase, not drifting, not bouncing with air current, but stepping, one leg after the other, moving upward like it had a destination in mind.
Gabe.
A dog in the background was barking continuously, the kind of bark that signals something wrong rather than something playful. Animals respond to atmospheric and energetic shifts before humans register anything. That dog had registered something. The balloon reached the top of the staircase. Whatever was animating it, it wasn't done going up. Rooftop figure. They spent a summer evening on a rooftop in Goa Cards. Conversation, nothing to worry about, but the footage about them told a different story. Standing silently behind them was a pale figure in white, with long dark hair and a face that didn't look right close enough to loom over the group, present enough to be unmistakable on camera. Not one of the friends reacted. Not one of them turned around. In paranormal research, entities of this type are sometimes described as operating on a frequency the naked eye cannot see, visible only through a lens, invisible to direct perception. It means something was standing over that group all evening, and not one of them ever knew. Abandoned house. Paranormal investigator Hassan Barbar had built a reputation through documented encounters with jinn, but what happened during an investigation in an abandoned house tested his team in a way nothing before had. One member of the group disappeared mid-session. They found him moments later, suspended upside down from the ceiling, with a tall, dark figure standing over him in the corner, making no move to release him. Hassan repeated the name of God continuously while trying to reach his teammate. The footage ended abruptly, alongside the sound of screaming. Hassan confirmed afterward that they had escaped, but his teammate remained completely unresponsive for 2 full days, conscious but unreachable. Office chairs. 2 men were having a completely normal conversation in an office when the chairs in front of the desk shifted slightly on their own. Neither man had touched them. They paused, registered it, then made the quiet, mutual decision to let it go and keep talking. Seconds later, both chairs launched violently across the room and slammed into the door with a force that instantly ended any willingness to rationalize what was happening. One man ran straight out the front. The other disappeared into the dark in the opposite direction. Poltergeist activity almost always follows this exact escalation pattern. Small movements first, just enough to be noticed, then a sudden, violent demonstration. Researchers believe this is deliberate, as the entities are observing your reaction before doing something more malevolent. The Piñata. In Mexico, a shop owner named Mario Lara had been dealing with a piñata in his store that wouldn't behave like an object, and eventually moved it to a back storage room, hoping to contain whatever the problem was. During a night shift, a female employee was working alone when something grabbed her and dragged her across the room with force she couldn't immediately resist. After a few seconds of struggle, she broke free. When the security footage was reviewed, the pull was clearly visible, sudden, directional, and coming from nothing. The connection to the piñata was too consistent to keep ignoring. Mario got rid of it. Whatever had been attached to it, he wasn't willing to find out what came next. The Desert Parade. In April 2025, a man rode his bike through a quiet stretch of desert, and something quietly shifted around him. Birds appeared overhead first, circling in tight, synchronized loops that looked less like murmuration and more like an escort. Then the strays arrived, dogs and cats falling in behind him, one by one, completely silent, no barking, no chaos, just moving in the same direction he was moving. He never called out to them, never once looked back. They followed anyway, like something in them had already decided he was worth following. Whether that was instinct, coincidence, or something this world doesn't have a clean word for, yet remains genuinely open. Dinner aftermath.
Oh my God.
Two friends had just finished dinner and were standing at the sink washing dishes when the evening stopped being peaceful. A chair scraped across the floor and tipped over on its own, unsettling, but easy enough to brush off. Then the drying rack dropped without anyone near it. They were still processing that when a tray loaded with freshly cleaned dishes was hurled to the floor with a force that made brushing anything off completely impossible. Whatever had been building in that kitchen through the evening had apparently run out of patience. The quiet night they'd planned ended there, standing in the middle of a mess nobody had made. Bridge vanish. Riding ahead of a moving car across a narrow bridge was a cyclist, fully visible, easy to track. The camera panned briefly toward the side rails, rushing water below, then returned to the front. The cyclist was gone. No pull-off, no gap in the railing, no margin wide enough to swerve safely in front of a moving vehicle. The bridge offered nowhere to disappear to, and yet, that's exactly what happened. The perspective trick is the polite explanation. Dipped out of frame is the practical one. But neither sits comfortably when you watch the footage slowly and account for the location of that bridge. The internet hasn't settled on an answer, and honestly, it doesn't look close. The hostel push. Security footage from a hostel with a history of paranormal activity caught something that the boy living there had already experienced multiple times without any proof. He stepped out of the bathroom and was shoved hard by a visible, human-shaped silhouette that appeared for just long enough to make contact before the frame cleared. What made this harder to dismiss wasn't just the footage itself, but what he said afterward. This had been happening regularly. The push wasn't new. The camera just finally caught what he had been reporting all along, and suddenly the reports didn't seem quite as easy to question. The TV reflection.
A kid sitting right there.
The teacher knew the school had an eerie reputation. He'd heard the creaks and the hallway whispers for long enough that he'd made his peace with them, filing them under an old building, nothing more. That night, he was decorating his classroom after hours when he reached up to adjust something, and his eyes caught the dark screen of the television on the wall. In the reflection, a small child was sitting quietly at one of the desks behind him. He turned around. Empty room. He looked back at the screen. The child was still there. Same position, same stillness. Completely unbothered by the fact that it had no explanation. He left the classroom. He did not go back that night. Workout interruption. On October 7th, 2020, a home security camera recorded something that started small and refused to stay that way. Mid-dumbbell workout, his front door swung open on its own. His first assumption was a prank. He went to check and found nothing. He returned to his workout. Then the decorations on the wall began falling, one after another. No breeze, no vibration, no pattern that suggested anything structural. Each one came down like something was working through a list. The longer it continued, the less it resembled a coincidence. And at some point, the man reached a threshold and simply decided that whatever was escalating in his home that night, he wasn't going to be there when it peaked. Porch chair. A security camera clip has been making waves online. The first explanation came fast, strong winds, but it was dismissed soon. A security camera clip started circulating online, and the first explanation came fast. The blinds in the background were moving, gusts were audible on the mic, and a chair launching across a porch had a reasonable enough cause. Then the person who posted it added something that quietly dismantled the whole theory. The window was closed. The blinds were moving from a ceiling fan inside, and the trees visible just beyond the porch were barely shifting. That kind of force, with no wind source to account for it, is harder to file away. The poster admitted they had never believed in anything paranormal before that evening. Whatever moved that chair changed the position they'd held for years. The live stream. In Bogota, Colombia, a security guard on duty was mid-broadcast live streaming a personal discussion about negative energies when the conversation stopped being theoretical. He began reacting to something that wasn't visible on screen, struggling against a force viewers couldn't see, invoking sacred names in what looked less like performance and more like genuine attempt at protection. Viewers watching live assumed the worst until they could confirm he was still breathing. Several minutes passed before he came back to himself, sitting up slowly, visibly shaken but physically present. He didn't offer a full explanation afterward. He didn't need to. His face during those minutes said everything the footage alone couldn't. Walmart float. He was filmed levitating in a Walmart aisle, not hovering slightly, but floating fully above the ground, arms relaxed, pushing his cart like the laws of physics were someone else's concern. People nearby stopped completely, unsure whether they were watching a trick or experiencing something they'd never be able to accurately describe to anyone later. Online, the dissection started immediately. A hidden steel rod under his clothes, a heavily loaded cart redistributing weight into some kind of illusion. Both theories made rounds without either being confirmed. No wires appeared in any angle of the footage. Whether it was engineering or something stranger, nobody in that aisle looked particularly comfortable standing next to him. Thailand dig. In Thailand, a couple had followed what they believed was an ancient map to an undisclosed site deep in the forest, and after digging nearly 5 feet down, something finally surfaced. The moment the woman reached in and touched it with her bare hands, she was pulled backward a sudden directional force that she couldn't immediately explain as a loss of balance. She later described it clearly. Something had pulled her, not pushed, not tripped-pulled. Those familiar with the site suggested the artifact carried a curse that activated through direct contact. Whether that framing is taken literally or not, her account of what she felt in that moment was consistent and specific enough to be difficult to simply set aside. Night shift horror. Night shift security work comes with its own particular kind of silence, and most guards learn to make peace with it. This one found company instead. CCTV footage showed him mid-shift, sitting at his station, when he suddenly turned, lights up, and began gesturing and talking like someone had just walked over. He pulled out an empty chair and offered it, and kept the conversation going for several minutes. In the morning, he approached the building staff casually and asked why nobody had introduced him to the new guy he had met during the night. There was no new employee. There had been no one in that building. He had genuinely enjoyed the conversation. Glass presence. A worker who already knew his office had a reputation for mysterious activities decided to stay late and lean into it, pulling up recorded frequencies and sounds associated with paranormal entities, letting them play through the space. He didn't get far into the experiment. As he stepped toward the door to leave, something responded. He moved out quickly, and in the room he had just vacated, a light came on by itself. In the reflection visible through the doorway, the shape of something appeared in the room behind where he had been standing present in the glass, in a way it hadn't been when he was still inside. He did not go back in to confirm what he had seen. Don Carlos.
Juan, no estás con nadie, sube y ven a ver las cámaras, tengo todo grabado.
Reviewing his security camera feed, the shop owner noticed Juan, his head mechanic, deep in conversation with someone, animated, engaged, and fully present in the exchange. The workshop was empty. When the owner asked Juan about it, Juan answered without hesitation. A man named Don Carlos had come in about his car, said he'd been in an accident the previous night and needed it looked at. Juan described him clearly. The owner looked into it. There was no Don Carlos. Juan still insists the man was real. Nobody at that workshop wants to close up alone anymore.
De verdad que no me estoy chequeando.
Funeral shadow. Hours after a young boy's funeral in New Mexico, the security cameras at the site began recording things that couldn't be easily explained. A guard on duty noticed a small figure moving through the space, child-sized, unhurried, before it simply stopped existing mid-step. Assuming a child had been accidentally left behind, he went to investigate with a flashlight. The figure reappeared from the exact point it had vanished, moving again, still unaware of him. Whatever was still present in that building after the service had either not received the news or hadn't accepted it yet. Paused man. A man stood frozen in the middle of the street, and the word frozen is doing serious work here. 1 foot forward, 1 behind. Caught mid-stride like a video file that had simply stopped loading. He wasn't swaying, wasn't blinking, didn't register the people walking past him or the attention gathering around him. Someone filmed it, naturally, and the clip moved fast. Explanations ranged from a staged stunt to a rare neurological episode. But the thing that kept pulling people back to the footage wasn't the freeze itself. It was the complete absence of any sign that a human body was still running underneath it. Basement call. While exploring a reportedly haunted basement, a group of young women decided not to open with the Ouija board. One of them wanted to try something more direct first. She called out to whatever was there, addressing it plainly, asking it to show itself. It responded almost immediately. The room shifted in a way the camera caught before any of them fully processed what had just answered them. The Ouija board never got its turn that night. Whatever arrived when she called didn't need the board as an intermediary, and the group decided very quickly that they had already received more of a response than they had genuinely prepared themselves for.
Could you give us a sign if anyone is here? Maybe one of the balls, light them up, move them.
Sliding bag. A man spotted an elderly woman on the sidewalk, bent over her bag, and moved toward her to help. Before he closed the distance, she raised one hand slightly, a small, almost casual gesture, and the bag slid across the ground on its own and returned to her. No wind, no string, no second person nearby. She didn't look like someone performing. She looked like someone who had done that 1,000 times before and found it entirely unremarkable. Uninvited presence. The camera had been set up for something lighthearted, positioned to catch the daughter's boyfriend's reaction to a surprise. What it recorded instead had nothing to do with the plan. As he sat browsing the internet, something began happening around him that shocked everyone. Suddenly, he started to move in an erratic manner, as if being possessed and held by something, and started holding his face as if someone was controlling him, and then lights flickered, and things started scattering in his room. Whatever occurred in that room that evening had not been invited, and it didn't announce itself before it arrived. Hospital guest. Everything was normal. Then something changed. A hospital security guard was on his post when the automatic doors slid open for someone he could apparently see, and the camera could not. Rather than reacting with alarm, he reached for his clipboard and began registering the invisible arrival like any other admission, responding to something in the empty doorway. Then he retrieved a wheelchair and proceeded to escort his unseen guest inside. The following day, he had normally interacted with something, apparently unaware that anything unusual had taken place. Hospitals see more transition between states than almost any other building, and some believe that something doesn't always leave when it should. Well, encounter. At a remote location, a man fetching water from a well had his evening interrupted when a figure emerged suddenly and placed itself directly in front of him. Its appearance was jarring, the kind of face designed to unsettle rather than communicate, but it made no move toward him and showed no clear intent beyond the confrontation itself. He stood his ground long enough to register what he was looking at before the encounter ended as abruptly as it had started. He described it afterward as something between a woman and something possessing one. Most people watching the footage admitted they would not have remained standing where he stood, but he did, barely. Now is the time for today's open discussion. On a bus, a woman bus had her feet up, which normally wouldn't register as anything worth a second look, but the feet themselves stopped people cold. Gray, cracked skin that looked completely wrong for something living, and in place of toenails, long, dark claws that curled visibly at the ends. Witnesses who study cryptid sightings have documented partial transformation states,